Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here on my next Airspeed's Korra Rewatch. This one's going to be for K304 In Harms Way. Second part of this kind of Earth Queen two-parter. I really like this episode. I think it is good. The only criticisms really would be, I suppose, stuff that's just kind of affecting the series as a whole that I've talked about already. So let's just get straight into this one. Let's start off with the Red Lotus stuff and them freeing Pali from prison. Very cool fight scene. We basically get a 4-on-3 going into a 4-on-4 fight. Druk's also involved in there as well. We have Eska, Desna, Tonrok, and Zuko versus Zahir, Ghazan, Minghua, and then Pali comes out. I think it's a really cool fight, but it is very short, and so it's a very abrupt finish to the fight, and it doesn't really present everyone the best. Zuko, I feel they made a big mistake here by just having him be taken out so quickly. In that it makes him look like the worst fighter there. I get he's the oldest one there. I get it, and they're perhaps trying to say he's past his prime fighting days, but I feel Avatar's always had a sense of, unless you're super old, most benders who keep themselves active are still very solid even when they're older. Maybe it's just Boomy being this kind of absurd example, but I feel like Zuko, even at this age, what age would he be now? Let's say if he's 16, 17 at the end, 7 years. I get he's approaching 90 at this point, I suppose. But still, I feel he should put up a better fight than just Ghazan. He loses to Ghazan here, and Ghazan's attack, he doesn't even use lava bending here. He just throws 3 rocks, the simple 1, 2, 3 rock punch thing, and Zuko can't block it. It wasn't good choreography to take Zuko out. I would have liked it if he was handling Ghazan, which I suppose we're sort of meant to interpret it that they kind of cut to that right at the end, and that maybe they hadn't been having an even fight up until then. But I think they could have done a better job and maybe had Pali coming out, taking out Druk, and then helping to take out Zuko be a key part in the fight. Especially when we later find out that Zuko was there when the first attack came and they all defeated these guys before, and that was only 13 years ago, they say, which Zuko is still late 70s or something like that at that point. So I think they could have done this a bit better. I think the problem ends up being that they tease this amazing fight that happened in the past, right at the towards the end of the episode. Lin comes in, basically they are forced to reveal to Korra some of the stuff from book 2. Yes, we made the decision to keep you in the compound, but it was because of this kidnapping attempt by Zuko and these others. And he just says, me, Sokka, Tonrok, and Zuko fended off these 4 in the past when Zahir wasn't an airbender. How can you just say that this happened, they won that fight, and not touch on that at all? That's super impressive that group, a kind of slightly younger Tenzin, Tonrok defending his daughter, younger Zuko as well, and then Sokka defeating a combustion bender, a lava bender, a very powerful water bender, and then potentially a really strong non-bender. Who paired off with who? There's so many things to speculate about, and I think that's the one kind of weakness that's here, in that because they never really give you enough details about that, the first fight, it doesn't really present too much of a rivalry for the second fight, in that did Tonrok fight Zahir because he's her father, and then Zahir was the one leading the group? Was it always Zuko versus Ghazan? Was it Sokka against Pali because of experience with combustion benders, or what? I'm not really sure. That's where I think some of the confusion comes in, and just why did they not feel the need to tell that story? Because it's an important part of Korra's backstory that, like, you based a huge part of her character development in book 2 on it. You've now revealed it here and added onto it. It's important enough to Korra that you should, I think, tell us that full thing in full detail by showing us that sequence. Like, where was Korra when this was going down? Was she, like, kept away in the compound and she didn't see what was going on? She was, like, asleep the entire time, and this took place in the, like, in front of the compound, basically. Or, well, the compound wasn't around at the time, obviously, so what was exactly happening here with, like, Korra's, training as such? Was it literally just that they attacked the village and the fight went on? How did Korra get away without really, like, remembering any of this? Because clearly that means that they didn't get close to her, so the defense was really, really good. And then, especially when they reveal the whole Tonrock stuff, the Unalaq stuff later on, I feel a backstory of showing that, seeing Unalaq in a flashback, having to have his, like, other members of his group, because he's Red Lotus as well, go to prison, and them all just agree to not reveal their connection to each other, to keep Unalaq active, so book 2 can even happen. That would have been brilliant, and it would have, I think, brought this book kind of full circle in a way. Like, I think obviously the exact backstories for the villains are kind of important as well, but for Korra's connection to what's going on here, I think you sort of needed to do this, in that this would have been a way to really bring Korra into play in a much kind of a bigger way. Because I think the issue I take with this is that they make such a big deal about, like, a lot of Korra's issues with her, like, mentors in book 2 being her, like, concern over the fact that this happened, and how upset she is about the fact that she didn't get to be the Avatar in the way that every other Avatar was, because of this decision that was out of her control. Now she realizes it's actually, like, Zahir's fault why that happened. This should be what creates the personal issue between Zahir and Korra, but it doesn't. It's dropped, and I think they made a big mistake by missing out on every opportunity, basically, to actually create that personal connection between Korra and the villains. As it is, it's just Korra is now on the run, effectively, from the villains. They're dangerous, they want to kill her. Korra is just there to be protected, and they don't really give her a like, personal connection to them outside of just not wanting to get kidnapped or killed, which is overly simple given the big reveal at the end. But for the most part, this scene is really well done. Minghua freeing Pali is really cool, drilling through the ice. The effortless way in which she just kind of navigates the kind of giant chasm that she falls into. Pali has to, latch onto kind of Minghua's back to get them up to the surface. And immediately it's just like, Pali is better than Combustion Man, because she has normal firebending as well, whereas we didn't see Combustion Man ever do normal firebending. Blocks a dragon's fire and then just, like, knocks Druk out of the sky. Again, would be nice to know about the origin of Druk, but he's here. He gets kind of defeated in this fight. Not killed, but, still impressive debut for Pali here. Zahir beats Tonrock with airbending. And for the most part, like, this isn't meant to be like they kill them. They're just trying to get away. The group is reunited. We see Pali and Zahir kiss, confirming what we knew from before, from the previous episodes, that they are a couple. And slight little bit on Ghazan of, like, he's sort of lighthearted in a way, which is the one kind of slight aspect of his character they do sort of get across, in that he's a fairly kind of chill character for the most part. When he does say lines, you can tell that there's a sort of, like, ease to the way he says it, and he's not overly, like, stressed or concerned. So I think there was an opportunity to really build on that, but they didn't. But it is what it is. And I think when it comes to the Red Lotus stuff, by the end of this episode, you've left yourself in the perfect spot to tell that backstory. Because, one, you have the Red Lotus reunited now. So this group is together, they're not going to get anyone else into their cause. Now it's all up to where's their plan, what's coming next. Obviously they know their plan in the past was to kidnap Korra, but they don't exactly know for what reason. Now, what's the plan? Now is the perfect time to tell Korra, get her up to speed. Who are these 4 characters that she's facing? What do they know about them? Okay, they haven't said much about their goals in the past, but surely in the time since then, they've learned the background of these characters. And this is the way to, upon the reunion of the Red Lotus and Korra finding out about all of this, inform the audience about who these characters are. How did they come to join this group? What are their origins and stuff like that? Maybe not reveal everything now, but I think start the process of getting into who these 4 are as characters. The problem is they leave it far too late to even explain what the Red Lotus is. They don't leave any space for them to develop the characters really, and then they kill them. And it's just an example of, I suppose, misreading where your core positives with your series are, for the most part, is with your character writing and that sort of stuff. They don't do that here and sort of emphasize skills more so than that. And there's a certain limit to where you can get to with just having a character based off skills, and that as we see becomes a problem as we get into kind of later episodes. So I think at the end of this episode, if you basically held off a little bit on the separation of the 2 groups and just kind of kept Korra around for a little while, tell that story, then separate them, I think you could have really, really benefited. We'll get into now that the Red Lotus is back together. We'll discuss in the upcoming episodes the sort of, I think, misuse of the screen time of the Red Lotus and how it could have been better used to develop the characters as we go forward. So yeah, let's get into the, I suppose, main focus of this episode, and that is, it gets revealed, of course, last episode, Earth Queen is forming an army using the new Airbenders. Mako and Bolin get back to the group thanks to passports from their family. Nice little emotional goodbye, with a little joke of just the brothers are having a little bit of trouble remembering the names of all of their family members, because they've gone from being like on their own to suddenly having like 20 people that they need to remember. So fun little thing. But they get back, they confirm Korra's suspicions that the Queen is up to something, and the mission is now get Kai back, of course, but also free these other Airbenders, and the mission is on, basically. And I like this is where I think the references to the kind of previous Bossing State arc are good, because they basically say that Jinora is a bookworm. Mako's actually been reading those books because he's smart. He suggests they check under like Laogai, which I think is a cool reference in that, like, okay, it turns out to not actually be the case, but it's a good like suggestion. Why wouldn't they kind of go back to doing that? If the Dai Li are suddenly back out of nowhere, would they not go back to using their kind of underground base for something like this? Makes sense. But when we go to explore it, Jinora reveals her astral projection technique. We see the areas from the previous, the Avatar arc, but it's obviously all underwater now, and it's not the case. As for Jinora's technique, I really, really like this reveal. I think it's a great way to, I think, give a little bit of retroactive explanation to what she did at the end of book 2, as well as give her own unique technique that sort of is very defining for her, and it's in the end ends up being her signature airbending technique that is a requirement to get your arrow tattoos. So it all fits together quite nicely, in that she confirms in this episode very clearly that it is an airbending technique, this projecting your spirit in the way that she does, but it has a bit of spiritual stuff thrown in. And it sort of leans into this, if you've seen my discussion on bending and the I suppose how I categorize the different kind of sub-techniques and different kind of forms of bending, I sort of interpret it as that every bending discipline has its own spiritual technique. So water, we've seen the spirit bending. I think this is air's version of that. If you go back to beginnings, you see the shaman use firebending to sort of sense Korra's energy. I think that's the firebending version of kind of spiritual stuff. And then, while I'm not exactly sure on the Earth, I think it could be some element of like Toph's kind of wide-ranging seismic sense, the idea of her connecting to the banyan tree and that extending the range of her seismic sense to basically sense people across the world, more or less. I think that's like a spiritual earthbending technique, I think. And then you add in the fact then that, like, okay, each element then has its own sort of more advanced version of it, like the metal bending equivalent, the lightning bending equivalent. And then they also seem to establish here that there's a rare form that only a few people have, and it's considered special bending. And obviously we have combustion bending, we have lava bending, and we also have, I suppose, psychic blood bending specifically, or just psychic bending, and then psychic blood bending being a kind of even more special version. Which would leave kind of airbending as still having to kind of learn its kind of special forms. We'll get to one of them later on with the flying, which I'd more interpret as maybe its advanced technique, which means that there more than likely is still some sort of a technique with airbending that is on par with a combustion bending. Now, some people would lean towards it being like something like sound bending, which I think makes sense for air, like the whole like sonic boom type thing. That would be a very kind of destructive, dangerous technique because it would affect people's hearing, and then it's just airbending on such a powerful scale that it actually becomes like extremely destructive. So I think that would be a really cool thing to reveal at some point, and I think there's like options open for whatever way you want to do the airbending kind of ultimate. You have to be born with the technique. So that's cool, and I think Janora's technique here is well done, because, yeah, let's not forget, one of the other key factors in the final thing is that Janora's in the spirit world, but she comes out, her spirit comes out into the physical world to affect that final battle, and it's effectively just her channeling her spirit in a much more powerful way during harmonic convergence to do what she did there. Here is this kind of standard version of the technique, where she finds it fairly easy to project her spirit out of her body. And then I suppose the difference here, what makes it really special, is the ability to kind of float up and down and kind of like phase through objects, which like Aang couldn't do when his spirit was out of his body. He could just sort of walk around and he was still like attached to the earth. So I think the specialness of this technique does come from the fact that she's able to have such control over her spirit about like going up and down. She can link onto someone's kind of spiritual energy if she has a connection with them, and just kind of teleport her spirit there, which we see here. I like this sequence because she's just like, Korra kind of helps her through it, and that, how did you find me during harmonic convergence? And she explains it's the connection. And then Korra is just like, I know you have a connection with Kai, why didn't you focus on that? And Tenzin's like, what? And I like it because it's just like Korra noticed the kind of the relationship beginning to form between them, with Tenzin hasn't, and especially later on when like you have when Jinora actually projects in front of Kai and they have that scene. It's just an example of like, they're not going overboard with this, but just little moments to make it clear that these two do like each other. And it's just like, Korrasami, take a note of this subtle, like this small little relationship dynamic building between two very young characters here. Like, if you really want to get Korrasami across, do more moments like that, like just little awkward like looks, glances, blushes. They do it once with Korrasami, but it's not enough at the same as here. Especially later on when they actually find Kai, just the moment of like Jinora going up, hugging him, kiss on the cheek, and Bolin being like, whoa, I've got a juicy scoop here, and Mako just being like, you don't have to make a drama out of it, which I do actually like that scene of just Mako trying to be cool here, just like, you don't need to turn this into like a super secret thing. They sort of like each other, it's fine, Bolin, calm down. So I think that's a really cool way to just have them find everyone. Obviously, Elaine arrives just before the kind of plan properly comes into kind of fruition, and then it's just this kind of cool little escape sequence type thing where Tenzin and Korra find the others, Mako, Bolin, and Jinora find Kai, and everyone just has to escape as soon as possible. I like the little fight that we have between Mako, Bolin, Kai, and Jinora and the Dai Li guards, because Bolin, especially in that fight in the corridor, is really, really impressive. You could tell both of them that they're used to sort of like fighting in alleyways, kind of cramped situations. A bit of their pro-bending experience comes out, versus the Dai Li, who, you know, I think are equally adapted to that, because obviously they're used to kind of taking people out in streets, alleyways, and stuff like that. But just the kind of physicality, the athleticism of Mako and Bolin, the creativity, it's impressive that they do manage to take down this many Dai Li guards. And then Kai gets his big opportunity to take down the guard who is kind of, you know, singling him out for like extra attention in the airbending training, and which I suppose I kind of skipped past that. The airbending training itself, I thought it's interesting in that one. Obviously, they don't really know exactly how to teach them how to do proper airbending techniques, so they're primarily just focused on, like, you know, airbending is sort of unique in the world. Not many people will have a counter to it. Let's just focus on getting them powerful enough to deflect earth and stuff like that. So they just teach them how to do a very basic kind of like stream air out in front of you, and we see kind of Kai defending the other people around him because he's more skilled, showing this kind of, I suppose, deep down sense that in this tough situation he can sort of be relied on to care about other people around him, that the part of his character that's been presented as selfish isn't the only like core trait there, that deep down there is this sense of he will put himself on the line for other people. And you see a certain like determination where if he could kind of get past the whole kind of being a thief aspect, he could become a very kind of trustworthy member of the group. And while I don't think they give it a huge arc in this episode, I like that they just have this experience that Kai has just been through as the way to immediately get past the issues of him with the group. He realizes that they could have left him behind. They could have just said that, you know, everything that I've done to them, they don't need to come back for me because I was so horrible to them. But them coming back, and especially Mako and Bolin being the ones like right there to find him, it's meant to signify this idea of that group truly does care for him. He can trust to be around them, and because of that he will put himself on the line for this group, as we'll see later on in the season. I think it's a really nice little arc for a minor character they've just introduced to smooth out that initial kind of bad aspect of his character, in that it's not completely gone. He still ends up being a little bit kind of roguish, of kind of like inspiring, I suppose, Jinora to kind of speak her mind a little bit more, and I think they play it quite nicely here. And just seeing him apologize to the brothers, and just, you know, embrace that the group that you know saved him so many times has come back to him at a time when he didn't expect them to, and he has to kind of repay them for that. And we see that it's through really, I suppose, committing to his airbending training to make it happen. So very, very cool sequence. We see the confrontation with the Earth Queen outside of the when they get outside. This is a scene where, like, I really don't think this goes really anywhere. Like, I think they try and make a big point out of, like, the Earth Queen saying that, like, if you take these airbenders, you are effectively declaring war against the Earth Kingdom. And I'm like, I buy into this a bit more if you were presented as a bit more of a serious character, but you feel like a bit of a joke, and it's hard to see it as, like, it's hard not to see it as nothing more than her just kind of being, like, petty, that, like, oh, you're gonna take these people. But, like, if it ever really came out to light what she was doing, while Boomy explains that, like, yes, she sort of has the right to, like, conscript her kind of her people, I don't think the world would think too highly about this sort of more conspiracy in the Earth Kingdom stuff. So you know, the result is obviously the call for the, I suppose, capture of the Avatar, which we see in the later episodes to bring this plot back, which feels like it's more or less done with. But again, you've sort of set up this feud between Korra and the Earth Queen, which doesn't go anywhere at all. Like, nothing comes of this, basically. They don't even really delve into it too much when Korra actually talks to Zahir about, like, tyrannical rulers and the world leaders. So it's a very odd sort of like the plan here, in that, as I said in the last review, I really do, for the most part, see the Earth Queen as just a character that they purposefully build up to be a borderline, like, comical level, like, tyrannical ruler who the Red Lotus can be somewhat justified in taking out, and a character who isn't so important to us that we don't care too much when she's taken out, but we can appreciate the shock of, like, the Earth Queen, who has a connection to a character we knew from before, has been killed, and what is the effect that actually has. So it works on some fronts. Again, was it worth the 2 episodes to more or less set her up? I'm not exactly sure. As I said, I don't think you really needed to, because I think there's other characters much more in need of development than the Earth Queen. Is that most of the episode? I think so. I ended up covering it in a kind of slightly odd way in the order of scenes, but the really important one, of course, how could I forget this? The decision that they give the Airbenders that they save to join them, or, like, basically be relocated somewhere safe. I love this as a resolution to the how do we kind of get people to join us, and it's not by, like, trying to really convince them in any way. It's just by giving them the choice, giving them the freedom to choose if they want to, because airbending's about freedom 100%. You need to allow them to make that decision themselves, and that's why I think it works here. This group has saved them because they care about them, and I like how Korra and Tenzin didn't just immediately say, "You're coming with us now." They realized the kind of error of the way they approached things in, like, the 2nd episode, and changed it up and basically just said, "Do you want to?" And they said, you know, "Come with us, train at the Airbender, at the Air Temple, become an air nomad," and the whole group wants to, because I suppose they've got a little hint of what airbending training is, and they want to kind of learn that. And to some degree, I assume it's paying off kind of the debt of gratitude in a way to being saved. But as we'll see, it's not all smooth sailing. I think they all want to learn their airbending, and they all want to sort of be a part of something, and that I think the group wants to stick together because they've sort of bonded as a group, especially, like, Kai with the others. So it's fitting. It's just what we're going to see here with the Tenzin kind of side plot stuff is, again, the cultural aspects of the Air Nomad kind of coming into play, and Tenzin not being as willing to sort of change things up. That I like the arc that we go on as we get into it in episode 7. We'll discuss it then, but it's a nice setup. The splitting up here of Korra and Tenzin, I struggle with it a little bit, because it ends up really heavily sidelining the Airbender plot, in that when Opal is introduced and she's an Airbender, when she's eventually sent over to the temple, it really felt like we just completely skipped past the introduction scene of, like, Opal to the other characters. And I think that's because this Airbender plot got so sidelined as we go forward. Admittedly, it's sidelined in the upcoming episodes because of, like, the Zhao Fu stuff with Lin and Su Yin, which is fine. Because obviously we're going to get into the Red Lotus stuff. It's just, I feel there was a better way to sort of smoothly have the plots, like, transition together, keep the plots active for a bit longer, and so on. In that, like, if you want the Earth Queen to be a thing and come back, keep her in the plot for a bit longer. Have her really do more stuff while, like, our group is going to Zhao Fu and we're training at the air temples. But I think the real problem is, as they kind of maneuver the Red Lotus into position, it just takes way too long. Like, we're 4 episodes in now. The group has only just come back together, and they're doing a great job at setting up just how strong this group is. Let's not forget what Zuko said in the last episode. Individually, they can take everyone out. As a group, who knows who can stop them? And now their leader is also an airbender. They're even better than before. It's really impressive how they're setting them up. This is a hugely threatening group. In terms of fighting prowess, how are they going to be stopped? The problem is just, what are they doing? Who are they? What is the group? Motives, character, all that stuff takes way too long to come out. It just does, and I think we're going to see over the next couple of episodes the issue with that. And obviously we'll get to episode 8 and the criticisms I have with that one. 9, obviously, as being a big reveal episode for the group, but does it come too late? Is that scene good enough as basically teaching us everything about them? And we'll discuss that. So this has been the review for In Harm's Way, K304. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on this episode. But yeah, it's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.